Hello! Welcome to our behind the scenes for episode 8. So the radiator thing was a bit of an issue, and I was really you were, I think, more concerned about it when it happened, when we were behind the Chevron there and hunkered down and trying to figure out what we were going to do.
I don't know if there's a male-female element to this or just a sort of stress bag and sort of non-stress bag element. So I don't want to genderize something that doesn't need to be. There's no question that I respond less well. I'm not going to say poorly. Less well to these kinds of breakdowns and issues.
Well, what happens is Greg gets really focused on the actual task, and then he doesn't want to talk about it while he's doing it. I'm asking questions about, can I help you with this? Can I do this? Can I bring this? Should we do this? And Greg doesn't want to hear any of it, and he just sort of shuts down and is focused on getting it done. And meanwhile, I'm there but I'm here to help. I can do things. Let me participate.
Yeah, and it's a little bit uncharacteristic for me because I am an excellent communicator, but I don't have it figured out, right? I'm sort of going through all the iterations and the permutations.
But he doesn't share it out loud.
Right, I don't have it figured out.
And
so
then I start getting feeling bad, he's holding something back, or there's something going on and he's not sharing it.
So before this becomes a couples therapy moment, I could communicate better. But I do get more stressed about it because, look, time is money, breakdowns are money, parts are money.
But I look at it we're going to get it solved one way or another. We were in the United States when this happened. We could get it towed, we could bring it to a dealer, we could get it fixed. Yes, it would cost us money, but that's what we set out to do on this trip, and we knew that we were going to have to spend to continue it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you have to just, you can nickel and dime it, but you can't. At a certain point, a BMW costs what it costs. A Honda, Yamaha, or KTM costs what it costs.
Right.
I mean, they're big motorcycles, and
they're carrying us, and it's it's very important that they're in good shape.
Yeah. So, and the other piece of it is I've found that I almost get more stressed about it in the States. Not almost, I do. And maybe we have a lot more experience breaking down in Latin America. It's also, frankly, cheaper because getting towed is not hundreds of dollars. It's maybe $100.
Yeah.
So there are elements of that to it.
That's true.
Yeah, maybe that plays in. Nevertheless,
I think that they might be a bit more flexible in Latin America. If you go to a small shop, they're willing to give it a try versus you're in the States, you're going to go to a dealer, right? Or if you go to a one-off mechanic, they would probably just say
overbooked.
Yeah.
And, we run a custom shop, right? We build cockpits, they're custom, and there's a queue at any given time, and it's real. So we understand that element, and yet the fact that we work in Guatemala and do it, we have more flexibility than we've experienced with mechanics and stuff in the States. So yeah, I think there's a whole bunch of things around it. Also, just me not being the best version that I'd like to be of myself.
Well, look, it was hot. We were back there, we were miles away from the dealer. It was a Saturday night, and it was a stressful situation.
Let me add a piece into this, not again as a therapeutics moment, but there's also something to be said. The way down from the Arctic Ocean was actually a pretty trying time, I think. Not so much as riders, but certainly as travelers and sort of as people trying to do this maybe unique project. Social media wasn't working the way we had hoped it would work. We weren't finding the right way to tell the story. Our sales weren't what we needed it to be, right?
And things were really expensive. It was a time when fuel prices were really high. Everything got really expensive. Then everything on the business side got expensive because of shipping and materials. So all of the prices went up. So we were carrying a lot of stress on the way down.
And most of the people who are traveling, and the way we traveled before when we did a big north to south trip, was you save up your money, you quit your job, and then you're a traveler. And that's really, you might post on social media, you might do other things, but you're really in a period of time of travel. And launching Roughly a few years ago, there was no way that we were going to become travelers, on a savings that you don't create when you're trying to build a business.
Yeah.
So it, in a sense, was and will be a gamble of, can we make this work for everyone, for Girl Up, for people who are following along and hopefully enjoying what we're doing. And of course, for us, that at the end of the day,
that we can afford to do this.
The visibility creates sales that allows Roughly to flourish and fuels the fuel of the trip. So we were,
Yeah.
you
So
know,
that's-
combination of stressed out as we were headed down to Baja and like with our tails on fire, not just because it was like 100 degrees out,
Yeah.
but also because like things are, you know, less expensive down south and we needed that.
But now going back to the radiator thing. So then when we finally like got to the BMW, when we called Doug at Ventura in California and asked about the whole radiator thing, and he was saying it's like a $800 radiator. Yeah, it was. We felt like it was going to be like a punch. Like we didn't
It's a gut
expect
shot,
that
yeah.
it was. And this was my new Luna Laguna, who only had 20,000 miles on her at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And my other one, my Moxie Thumper, had 80,000 miles and didn't have.
the place.
Moxie Thumper had never had a new radiator. Like it was the same one that I got her with in 2013. So I don't know. I felt a little bit bad that like now I already need to put a new radiator on this bike that's new to me. But the good thing was that like we did have Moxie Thumper there waiting, and we had the connections. Like by having that Bunka-Biker, having Jeff being able to tow us and didn't charge us anything, was able to bring us all the way up to where Cody was and where the BMW was. That was like key. Like we would have had to pay. Like I looked at the cost for towing before I thought about Bunka-Biker, and they were going to charge $400 to $500 to get us up there.
Easily, yeah.
So-
And you know, it's a factor of this that you don't factor in, and yet almost always becomes a factor. And that is the people that you meet
Yeah.
and that you sort of don't expect, or the network that you've created without realizing it. Certainly the online tools like
Bunka-Biker.
and meeting Jeff and that him being willing on a Friday night, a holiday
Yeah.
weekend. I mean,
Oh, it was a Friday night, yeah.
yeah, right? And then, the other piece is that we were, 20, 30 miles from Cody.
Yeah.
Who's just been this, like, gravitational, amazing force in,
Yeah.
in season 1 and now season 2
Yeah.
of Go Roughly. So, yeah, it was just like a wonderful thing that of all the places to break down and him being there and him and his wife, Amber, just being amazing. So, you think you're on your own, and in some cases you truly are, but in most cases you truly are not, because even strangers sort of become saviors and support and stars.
Yeah, and that's really all part of the adventure. We've experienced that
Time and time
everywhere we
again.
are, everywhere we go. So it really adds something unique to it, you know. And as much as you were really stressed out about it when we were going through it, like having those people and now being able to look back and see the group of people that have helped us along the way, it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, there's somehow a reminder that I always have to sort of do for myself, which is like, I'll go with this place of starting to just count up the problems, and a lot of times in terms of dollars and cents, and, hotels, motels, all the expenses, and as opposed to like, hold on, one step at a time, because all these other things come in that not only sort of reduce the cost, if you want to look at it like that, but make it into an experience and not ultimately a bad experience, which this ultimately
No, it
was
wasn't.
not.
Like, we were just really lucky that Hollywood happened to be there and was available to go and get the radiator out and to send it over, and that we
We're also kind of lucky that my dad turned out to be a halfway decent videographer.
I bet you guys actually saw that they were doing it. Yeah.
There's a lot of footage that was lost that somehow became vertical and couldn't, but he got the gist of it,
he
and
did
that's
good.
how we were able to.
Yeah, to show it like that.
Yeah.
But it worked out so well. And I know you didn't necessarily want to show that we were using the, what's it called?
Well, I'm not trying to hide things, but it was a
what was it called?
the stop leak.
Stop leak. So that's stuff that you're supposed to put into your what's it called, into the radiator to see if it could like plug a little hole. Like people all over online and everybody said that's one thing that you can do in the case of the emergency if you do have like a little pinprick puncture and that's causing the leak. And like we couldn't see exactly where the leak was, so it was doable. But obviously when we ended up going to the dealer, they were like, well, now we're going to
Bad
have to like
idea. Why would
flush
you-
it out and it's all caught up in your tubing and everything. And so we did. We flushed it out. It was boiling hot, and they gave us a tarp outside, so that was nice. But like it's just something that we had to do. Like it would have sucked if we didn't do that. And
Didn't
like
try it, you mean? And
exactly. And then like we just spent all this money to get a new radiator and everything when we could have just like plugged it and gone to LA.
Yeah, and we did understand that we had the parts bike radiator that
Yeah.
was perfectly good. So there was an element of like patch it and
And just
put a
get
Band-Aid
there.
on and get to LA, even though that sounds easier than it is when it's hundreds of miles of interstate in the boiling heat. But there was that element of like, if it can patch and last for, you know, a few
Yeah.
tanks of gas, like we can make it, especially if we were considering riding overnight.
Yeah.
So that, you know, the other thing is that if you're not a mechanical whiz or like, we certainly are not those that believe that you should like know all the mechanics or be a mechanic in order to do
A trip like this.
a big
Yeah.
trip. You learn as you go. I think anybody who says otherwise, like, well, how could you not have already known? Because you don't, and you can prepare for your whole life and buy and have things hanging off of every spare part and every possible, and then you never end up going. You get hit by a bus or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like you go and you learn along the way and you keep a good attitude.
And
about
we've
it.
now learned a whole bunch of things. We can now install and remove a radiator.
I mean,
like,
my
there's-
first trip was in a carbureted cruiser, and it was L.A. to Panama. I knew nothing about carburetors. This bike got gummed up daily, practically daily, and I became a whiz at opening that carburetor up, cleaning it out, putting it all back together. I could do it like a pit crew. And you move on, and now I don't have a bike that has a carburetor, never will again. Like, it's useless information, but that's how you go. Now we know a little something about radiators, and maybe we wouldn't try the stop fix again. Maybe we would, but you do. There's perfect, and then there's what you do on the road. I feel like I'm preaching.
Yes, well, that's okay.
That's what we're here to do.
Anyhow. So, yeah, radiator issue got solved. That was great. And then we were able to finally, like, make our way down into Mexico, which is what we've been, like, aiming to do since we left the Arctic.
This is the beautiful backdrop of the back atrium area. It's not really a yard.
Yeah.
Of the place in Zacatecas.
That's where we are right
now. And yeah, I think just rounding out that piece, like the adventure, you know, there's a lot of talk about adventure. I think we've written a couple of posts about it. You've written a couple of posts about it. We've talked about it like on Adventure Rider Radio. I mean, it's a big theme of like, what is adventure? And the difference between adventure and vacation.
Yeah.
Or holiday. Or, you know, adventure and what is just sort of a sucky ordeal.
Yeah.
And part of it is attitude, that you don't get totally down by this stuff. And part of it, too, is that these things do happen.
Yeah.
You know, like...
And they add some drama to it, you know? And it's not always going to be
Problem solving.
great and easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you got to think through it and figure out how you're going to get out of it. And then it's that thing where you're like, now I can look back and say, oh my God, I can't believe I got through that. That was amazing that I was able to do that. It sucks and I don't ever want to do it again, but I got through it. And it just adds sort of a layer of complexity to your story, to your adventure that you can take and probably have learned something from it, you know, and carry that with you.
And I think the last piece I would say about that is that there's no question in my mind that those types of things are what make you stronger, you know, here and here. And that sort of like you begin to lose your shit less about things, whether it's in your daily life outside of travel, and certainly in travel, you know. You can kind of look at those times when you grounded your bike and needed to hike down the side of the mountain, or when you had a breakdown in the middle of nowhere and this and that happened. And you sort of realize that those like daily worries of like whatever comes along in your daily life, like, oh my God, it's, you know what? I've been through some tougher things.
And you
than
can
this.
handle that, yeah.
It makes you a stronger person.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us here on our behind the scenes, and we will be back next week.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.